The swamp doesn't make noise the way a forest does. It breathes. And if you've ever been deep enough in one past the point where you can still hear the road, you already know that what lives out there doesn't always stay out there. I grew up on the edge of a bayou in southern Louisiana, in a parish where the nearest Walmart was 40 minutes north, and everyone's backyard eventually became something darker than yard. You learn the swamp the way you learn a person slowly, with respect, paying attention to when its mood shifts. I was 19 this summer. It shifted in a way I still can't explain. My neighbor Clyde, 60-something, lifelong trapper, man who had probably spent more nights in those wetlands than in his own bed, came to our door on a Tuesday evening in July. He didn't knock the way people knock when they're visiting. He knocked the way people knock when something is wrong and they've already stood outside for a few minutes deciding whether to knock at all. He told my father he hadn't checked his trap lines in 4 days. Not because he was sick, not because he was busy. Because on Friday evening, he had walked out to the tree line at dusk, the same tree line he had walked to every single evening for 30 years. And something was standing at the edge of it. He described it as tall. He said he initially thought it was a person, someone lost maybe, standing very still between 2 cypress trees. He raised a hand to wave, and it raised a hand back. Not a wave, just a slow mirroring of his gesture. The arm going up at the same speed, the same angle. Like a reflection. Like something that had been watching him long enough to know exactly how he moved. He went inside, locked the door, did not go back. My father went with him the next morning, in daylight. They found the trap lines undisturbed. They found nothing at the tree line. They found prints in the mud, and this is the part my father never liked to talk about, that were shaped like a person's feet, wide and flat, but spaced about 6 feet apart from each other. Whatever had been standing there hadn't been standing still. It had been pacing. Clyde moved his trap lines a 1/4 mile east after that. He said nothing more about it. Men like him don't narrate their fear, they just quietly reroute around it and don't explain why. I didn't think about it much until 5 years later, when I came home for Thanksgiving and my mother mentioned, the way you mention the weather, that Clyde had stopped trapping altogether. When I asked why, she stirred her coffee and said, "He says the thing at the tree line learned to knock." I want to start by saying I am not someone who gets lost. I have a degree in environmental science. I spent 2 summers doing fieldwork in the Okefenokee. I know how to read water, read light, read the way moss grows on cypress bark. I carry a GPS, a compass, a paper topo map as a backup. I do not get lost. On a solo survey trip in the spring of last year, I got lost. Not gradually. Not the slow creep of disorientation you can course correct if you catch it early. I stepped around a stand of tupelo trees to take a water sample, turned back, and the trail was gone. Not overgrown. Not flooded. Gone like it had never been. Like I had stepped through some membrane into a part of the swamp that operated by slightly different rules. The GPS still showed my position. The position it showed was correct. I recognized the coordinates. What the position showed was that I was standing exactly where the trail should have been. I walked in expanding circles for 3 hours. I found nothing I recognized. I found, at one point, what I thought were my own boot prints in the mud and realized they were going in the opposite direction from what I remembered, which meant either I had been turned around without noticing, or those prints weren't mine. I made camp on a dry hummock and waited for morning. In the dark, the swamp does something to sound that I still can't rationalize. Things that should be far away sound close. Things that should be close go silent. Twice in the night, I heard what I told myself was a great blue heron, that prehistoric croaking call. But at a register too low, too deliberate, too patterned. Like something calling in a sequence, waiting and calling again. In the morning, the trail was where it had always been. 40 feet from where I'd made camp. Visible, dry, entirely unambiguous. I was out in 5 hours. My GPS log showed I had been moving the entire night. I have no memory of this. My boots were caked in mud to the ankle. The data from my survey equipment showed a 48-hour gap. I had been in the swamp for 1 night. The equipment said otherwise. I filed my report. I did not include the gap. I went back 3 months later with a colleague and found the hummock where I'd camped. There were marks in the bark of the trees around it. Low, systematic gouges, arranged in groups. My colleague said they looked like tally marks. I counted them. 48. My grandmother was a Houma woman who lived her whole life on the edge of the Atchafalaya. She did not believe in the paranormal the way people on the internet believe in it, as entertainment, as possibility, as something to discuss in threads. She believed in it the way you believe in weather. Matter-of-factly, preparedly, with the full understanding that disbelief doesn't protect you. She called it the rôdeur, the wanderer. Not a ghost, she said. Ghosts are the dead, and this was never alive in the way we mean when we say alive. She said it moved through the wetlands the same way water did. Wherever there was a way through, it found it. The rules she gave me were simple. Don't answer a voice you can't place. Don't follow a light after dark. And most importantly, if something in the swamp starts acting too familiar, too comfortable with you, acting like it knows you, leave. Don't engage with it. Don't try to understand it. Just leave and don't look back, because looking back is an invitation it understands. I was 26 and thought I had outgrown those rules. I was visiting her in late October, walking the back property at dusk, something I'd done 100 times as a kid. The path follows a raised levee for about a quarter mile before it drops into open marsh. Halfway down the levee, I heard my grandmother call my name. I turned around. There was no one on the levee behind me. I could see all the way back to the house, 2 lit windows, the porch light, nothing in between. But I had heard her. Her voice, her cadence, the way she clipped the last syllable of my name the way only she did. Not a vague sound I was interpreting. Her voice. I went back to the house. She was inside at the stove. She hadn't called me. She hadn't been outside. When I described what I'd heard, she went very still. She turned off the burner. She sat down at the table and looked at me with an expression I had never seen on her before. Not fear exactly, but the careful, focused look of someone doing a rapid and serious calculation. "How far down the levee?" she asked. I told her. She nodded slowly. Then she said, "It's been further back than that for 20 years. I thought we had an understanding." She wouldn't explain more. She made us tea and changed the subject, and that night she burned something in a small dish outside the back door, and I did not ask what. She passed away 2 years later. The property sold. I think about that expression on her face, that calculation. She wasn't scared of the rôdeur. She was the only thing between it and everything past the levee. And she'd spent 20 years negotiating a boundary it had just moved. I hope whoever lives there now doesn't wander that levee at dusk. I hope they don't know why that would be a bad idea. I hope they stay ignorant of it long enough to get out. My uncle has run fishing charters through the Manchac wetlands for 22 years. He is the least dramatic person I have ever met. He speaks in short, declarative sentences and considers speculation a personality flaw. He told me this story in the same tone he would use to describe a mechanical problem with a motor. 3 seasons ago, in October, he took a group of 4 out for an overnight base run. Standard trip, water he'd covered 1,000 times. They anchored in a wide channel around 10 p.m. and fished until about 2 in the morning, when the bite slowed and most of the clients drifted to sleep. My uncle was awake, alone at the stern, when he noticed a light moving through the trees about 200 yards east. Not a fixed light. Moving steadily, parallel to the channel. Another boat, he thought someone running without proper navigation lights, which was illegal but not unusual. He watched it for about 10 minutes. Steady pace, steady direction. And then it stopped. And then it turned. And came toward him. He said the light moved through sections of the marsh that he knew from 2 decades of running that water had no navigable channel. Thick cypress roots, sediment buildup, depths of maybe 8 inches. Nothing with a motor got through there. Nothing with any draft at all. The light kept coming. He woke the clients. By the time the first one was sitting up, the light was maybe 50 yards out and moving fast. And then it simply stopped. Winked out. Complete darkness where there had been a moving light for 20 minutes. They waited. Nothing. No sound of a motor cutting, no wake reaching them, no voice. Just nothing in the spot where the light had been. In the morning, my uncle motored out to look. He found no boat. No tracks in the sediment. Nothing snapped in the reeds to suggest something had pushed through. He found one thing. A strip of canvas, old, rotted, dark, with water staining, snagged on a cypress root at exactly the point where the light had stopped. Like something had been moored there, long ago. Like something was still trying to be. He took the charter back early. Told the clients there was weather coming. There wasn't. He has not run overnight trips in that section of the Manchac since. He didn't announce this change. He just adjusted the route on his booking site one day and never adjusted it back. When I asked him once if he thought it was a ghost, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I think whatever it is, it was looking for someone. I think it found out we weren't them. And I don't want to be there if it ever decides that's close enough." My best friend Renata disappeared into a swamp in the Florida Panhandle when we were 17. I want to be precise about that word, disappeared. Not drowned, not lost, not taken. Disappeared. Because her body was never found, and because of what happened in the 3 weeks before she vanished, I have never been able to settle on any of the ordinary explanations. We were at her family's fish camp on the Escambia for a long weekend in early August. A place they'd had for 30 years, a place Renata had been coming to since she could walk. She knew that water the way most people know their own neighborhood. It started 3 weeks before the trip. She called me, which she didn't do often, we mostly texted. She said she needed to tell me something, but that I had to promise first that I wouldn't try to explain it, I would just listen. I promised. She told me that for about 2 months she had been hearing, at night, through her bedroom window which faced a retention pond behind her neighborhood, someone saying her name. Not shouting. Not whispering. A conversational tone, like someone in the room with you. She said she had gotten up the first time and looked, and seen nothing. The second time, she hadn't gotten up. The third time, she started getting up but stopped herself, hand on the blinds, and decided there were things you didn't confirm. I asked her what the voice sounded like. She said, "It sounds like it's still learning." I didn't know what to do with that. I told her to tell her parents. She said they'd think she was losing her mind. I told her to sleep with the window closed. She said it didn't matter, she could still hear it. At the fish camp that weekend, she seemed fine. Better, even the way people get when they're around something familiar. We swam and cooked and stayed up late, and I thought maybe distance from that pond had helped. On the last night, I woke up at about 3 a.m. to find her side of the bunk empty. I found her parents asleep. I found the back door of the camp open, the screen unlatched. I found her sandals on the dock, placed side by side with a neatness that has stayed with me for 14 years. Not kicked off, not left carelessly. Set down. They searched the river and the surrounding marsh for 11 days. Dive teams, dogs, airboats. Nothing. I have told this story twice in my adult life, once to a therapist, once to a friend. Both times, the response was to look for the rational explanation. I understand that impulse. I've had it myself for 14 years. But I keep coming back to what she said. It sounds like it's still learning. Because if it was still learning 3 weeks before she disappeared, what had it finished learning by the end? These stories don't come from darkness or folklore. They come from people who went somewhere ordinary. Some of them are still looking over their shoulders at the tree line. Some of them didn't come back at all.